I'm Iris Muller. I'm a certified rehabilitation counselor and a proud mom of 2 children, one of whom has quadriplegic cerebral palsy and is nonverbal.
And I'm Alma Schneider, a licensed clinical social worker and the proud mom of 4 children, one of whom has Prader-Willi syndrome.
In this podcast, we discuss the uncensored truth about raising kids with disabilities.
Prepare to laugh, cry, and hopefully learn something new. This is Two Moms, No Fluff.
Hello, everybody. We are Alma Schneider, my friend here, and I am Iris Muller, Two Moms, No Fluff, and podcast in which we discuss the truth about raising kids with disabilities, uncensored, and we disclose our true experiences and stories here. And today, an interesting topic, which I'll let Alma tell you about.
All right. Well, welcome everyone. We are going to be discussing travel with our children. Yes, travel, which may not seem like such a big deal to a lot of you out there if you're allies and you do not have a child with a disability. But let me tell you, a lot of thought, a lot of planning, and a lot of emotional unrest can occur when even thinking about traveling with your child. So, with that being said, I'll pass the mic over to Iris.
I would just start, Alma, with the story from yesterday because it's a tiny little story, but still is meaningful. This is traveling by car. So we have a wheelchair accessible van with the ramp at the back. And we were on a family trip. And yesterday we left the hotel that we were staying in. That was a birthday kind of thing for my son. So we had my son and his friend and my daughter and her aide, my husband and myself, the wheelchair, the bath seat, which we forgot in the hotel, mind you. And now we don't even know how we'll get it back. Never mind. And we are first things first, if you don't have a wheelchair accessible van, you can't load anything into the car until the wheelchair is in with the child. The wheelchair is all tied in. It's a process that takes about 10 minutes, all the belt straps and everything. We had it going. Then my daughter was in the car. Then we put all of the equipment. We opened the rear bench so the 2 boys can sit at the back and everything is loaded into the car. And a second after we left the driveway, the 2 boys in the back, we're hungry. So we're like, okay, let's stop and grab something to eat. And as we finish ordering in a drive-through, I'm telling you, it's like 5 minutes after we left the hotel. My daughter's like, I need to use the bathroom with her communication device. And we were like, no, this is not happening. But it did happen. So we had to like undo everything. It's just, even leaving a hotel is an hour-long story for our family. It's just so pathetic. But yes, it is possible, and we do travel. And as Alma knows, we traveled extensively because of my husband's work and other related issues. And planes, we didn't do the boats. That would be like your, I guess, bit, but definitely planes, long flights, long car rides. We've done it all, and I'll share some more later on. Alma, back to you, my friend.
Your story reminds me of the fact that people who have babies experience that kind of situation a lot, where you get in the car and you get everything ready, you have all the paraphernalia, and then you're on your way and the baby poops and you have to get out and change a diaper. And so I just wanted to note that your daughter's 13, so you've been dealing with that for 13 years, of somebody who at the last second, everything gets delayed. And I think it's important to acknowledge that, because these kinds of things that are short-lived for most people, for people who have unique situations like quadriplegia or cerebral palsy, or any kind of a disability that requires other people to help you with these basic things. This is years and years of this. And one, I take my hat off to you, Iris, for, dealing with this. But just so people know the toll that it takes. And again, we're not asking for a pity party or, but we don't want to sugarcoat it. And these are things that again, most people deal with for a couple of years. And so to ongoing, it's really tough. And, I have situations, similar to that, not necessarily the physical stuff, but, somewhat related things. So the first story I'll tell is how when my son was diagnosed, how terrified I was that we were never going to travel again because of, reading about his disability. I felt, well, clearly we're never going to be able to go anywhere again because he's going to be completely unmanageable. So that was horrible considering that my husband and I were very big travelers. I used to live in Spain, I used to live in Japan, I've traveled, all over the world. And the thought of never being able to do that and with our other children was a horrible thought that we were going to have to deprive our whole family of travel. So let me start off by saying that's not the case. We have traveled extensively, but again, it does take a lot of preparation and a lot of work. And so one of the things, because Prader-Willi syndrome has quite a bit to do with food, and there's such a need for structure and for caloric, making sure that the calories are under a certain amount to stay safe and healthy. It can be really challenging. So one of our I'll give you a positive story and a negative story. We went to Israel a number of years ago, and we took one of those tours people might be familiar with, where we went with another family, and they took a small bus. I see you smiling, Iris. This is her family, her country of origin. And we drove, they drove us everywhere and to see different sites. And we never knew exactly when we were going to stop for lunch or dinner. So it was so challenging with our child who needs to know exactly where we're going and at exactly what time. So his perseverative behavior kicked in. He just couldn't stop asking, and he would, say he was hungry, and we, were not supposed to give him, extra food. So that was really challenging. And because we did not have the structure that we needed, and we could have, just brought lunch or breakfast for him, but that's not how he rolls. He wanted to eat what everybody else was eating, and at the same time that people were eating, yet he struggled with not having it at the same time that we normally did at home, and him not knowing what he was going to have. So that was really challenging. That kind of an unstructured trip where we didn't, where the meals were unstructured. Then I will give you a more positive story about a situation that seemed like it was going to be absolutely impossible. So when Lincoln was born, one of the first things I thought about was, we'll never be able to take a cruise ever, because cruises have food all day long, out and I think that I counted that you could conceivably eat 12 times a day on a cruise, because they have the snack time and the this and the that between meals. So I remember when he was born, because my whole family, I have 6 siblings, and we had all talked about how would it be great in the future when our kids are older and we can all take a cruise together, so nobody has to cook, and it could be a great family vacation with everyone. So immediately I was like, we're going to be excluded from the family vacation. We're never going to be able to take cruise. So fast forward, my husband had time off in between 2 jobs. He was going to be starting a new job in a month, and he was not allowed to work for that month because of his job, the nature of his job. So we decided off peak to take a cruise, to risk it. So one of the beautiful things about the cruise was that there was so much healthy food in the buffets. There are many buffets in a cruise. So we were able to load our son up with every meal without paying for it, because everything's free once you get on the cruise. So we would just give him very low calorie salads and things that we normally wouldn't give him that were really expensive, like seafood that are low in calorie, high in protein.
Yeah.
And he was able to eat that with our meals, and it actually worked out. So I remember that being, telling everybody in the Prader-Willi syndrome forum on Facebook, guess what? You are going to be able to take your kid on a cruise. If you ever thought you couldn't take your kid on a cruise, the
Yeah.
only, my son, I will say, he was younger, so he had to be with us at all times. Once, a child with Prader-Willi syndrome is older and wants to go off on their own, that will probably not be the right time to take them on a cruise. So that's a negative and a positive story related
Yeah.
to food.
Yeah, the cruise sounds like a calorie disaster. This is one of the reasons why I avoid cruises, because I have no self-control. So I'm just like, I can only imagine how it feels like being the self-control for another person on a cruise. That's like a brave, brave move, Alma. I salute you for that. Yeah. And I want to piggyback on something that you said earlier about like doing things while our kids are young, because I also have that same sense. Like, I think that in a way, I would probably think that travel with Karen was also impossible. But the one reason that I never went down that route is that from the very beginning, we started flying with her, looking for therapies and medical advice, and to kind of see, we try to like see all that we can do to help resolve the situation in the early months and years that we were thinking we will reverse this. So a lot of money, effort, and time went into this, and I think that because I traveled so extensively, and I'm telling you, I would stay, let's say when we were living in Calgary, Alberta, I would be there for 3 weeks, and 1 week I would be out traveling with her. And same goes to the year that we were in Michigan. Like I was home I had a suitcase. I would wash everything and everything would go back to the suitcase ready for the next travel, because there wasn't any sense in undoing and doing everything. I traveled so much with her for therapy. The thing is that as the years went by and we also like attempted traveling for actual like vacation or visiting our family in Israel, it was a whole different ball game, and that the sense that this might be something that would have to end one day, because as she's growing and her needs become more complicated, we really thought that there's a clock ticking and there might be an end for all this. And now with COVID, obviously we did not travel with her in the last couple of years, and I'm wondering if this was the end of that or not, because I back to a car ride. We were just talking about our bathroom breaks and having a baby and change his diaper. It's like, it's a nice analogy, but it's almost like an insult, to hear that, because the level of complexity of taking our child out of the car, the level of complexity of using a public bathroom, it's just like strangers would not understand it. I always like to go back to the car ride we just took a few months ago to the Abilities Expo. Highly recommended. Anyone who's listening, go to the Abilities Expo if you have any medical needs that require durable medical equipment. That's the place to go. But we drove from Midland, Michigan to Chicago. It was supposed to take 5.5 hours, and we people managed to stretch it out to 11 hours because of a few bathroom breaks for our daughter. It was a total disaster. So I don't know how air travel would be influenced by the growth and changes in phases and stages. But while you can, if you have the opportunity, just jump on it. Just take that train, go on that flight, visit family, because things might change. And if you have the ability to do it, whether it's a financial opportunity, an invitation, a place to go, please live life to its fullest, because it's just it's not easy, but nobody guarantees that it would get any easier in the future. So while you can, do it, because life is made of experiences.
Yes.
No materialistic stuff can ever replace good memories and quality time with your family and loved ones. So my recommendation is always to like brave it out and do it. And Alma, I know that the stress before a flight is something that you also share with me, but we can talk about that a little bit. Do you want to say how you plan for a trip?
Yeah. Well, one of the things that before I forget, I want people to think about, if they're going somewhere, to talk to other people in your who might have similar issues to yours, to get tips, things that you might not have ever thought about, because again, we always say you don't know what you don't know. So it's really, uh, we really recommend talking to other people in your boat, and hopefully, it can make your trip more pleasurable and less stressful. uh, Before I go on a flight or on a trip, I always make sure to have snacks with me, because sometimes, and this goes for anybody who's like trying to watch their weight or trying to be healthier, always have something in the car that's healthy, because if you have to stop, you might not have healthy options. So I'm talking about, food related things, but we don't, we have been stuck in the car sometimes where we don't have any food, and we might have to stop at like a McDonald's, which is a nightmare if you have a child with Prader-Willi syndrome, because
Yeah.
food is so caloric, and if you have other kids, they're going to want more food maybe, and it just turns into a very difficult situation. So one of the ways that I plan is always having healthy food in the house, in the car or in my bag if we're going on a plane ride. um, so that's number one. I also have serious talks with my other kids about not talking about, and this isn't as much of an issue now and understand it better, but on when they didn't really get, um, that they can't that it was going to make it very stressful if they talked about, I'm hungry, I want to get this, I want to get that, that it would bring up anxiety with our child wanting food. And it was really important for us to have constant communication with our kids. Say, we're going to do this later, I'm going to give this to you later, but don't bring it up, don't bring up lunch to Lincoln, or don't, all these things, because it would cause him anxiety. So communication, being practically prepared with food, um, having open communication with the other kids about not bringing up food, and if we're traveling somewhere, talking to the people ahead of time so that your child won't hear it, talking with people that we're visiting maybe, and explaining as much as we possibly can about our kids' needs, because my son and a lot of kids who have disabilities are very embarrassed that they're different, and they don't want it to be a big part of their experience. So I try to do all of that ahead of time and explain what's needed. If we're going to visit someone else, if we're going to travel, make sure that there's, for us, that there's food security, so that there's a door, that is going to be locked, so that my child can have access to the kitchen, which is very rare, but that people can accommodate us, but they can, and they make an effort. So those are some of the things that we do to prepare for travel.
Yes, I think one of the things that is helpful is not just getting advice and recommendation for people who from people who actually live in a certain country, because the perspective might be very different also as a tourist. Like, how do people experience that country or that place as tourists? I can only imagine how hard it might be to go to India with a child with Prader-Willi, because they are so in the habit of like giving the kids candies and cookies and extra food and all of that might be like a real challenge to kind of something that might be pure pleasure and enjoyment for other kids, for your family might be really tricky. And
That goes for allergies too, not just
yeah.
Prader-Willi, so many other disabilities.
Yes. So definitely, it's just like and for us, for example, traveling, going back to my home country, Israel, where people, there is no word in Hebrew for tact or tactfulness, and people really don't have tact or tactfulness. It's just like manners is something very relative, and there's no like politically correctness over there, which is a part of the warm welcoming environment. Like you can like ask anyone for help and they'll basically be there. But on the other hand, it's like we had some like very interesting questions and statements that were said both to my daughter, her aides, and just like I remember one of our Canadian aides that almost fainted at the level of a conversation we had with a falafel salesperson. We're just like, it's just very, very
What did they say?
interesting.
Now I want to know, what did the falafel say?
I won't go into it right now, but that's life in Israel. So basically, some things silence would respect them better. Let's put it this way.
Okay.
But it's basically what I wanted to say is for us, there's always like a big, big stage of preparation and research about the destinations, specifically about the travel kind of medias. Like when I remember when we were in China, we were using a bullet train for a few times, and that was our first encounter with the bullet train and the whole accessibility features, things that might be tricky for our family. But in that process, something that I love to share, it's kind of from the world of unschooling, is like we're going to experience something like really, really big for our family, for us. Many of those countries that we visited with our children, it was our first time visiting as adults sometimes. And the idea was that as I was doing my research, kind of preparing for the technical difficulty, we would also prepare our kids and read books about that next destination and see videos about traveling in that place and talk about the different languages and foods and what the experience might be like. And we made the kids also partners in that planning journey. And that's almost like half the fun is the
Oh, yeah.
preparation. And
The
you can,
anticipation.
yeah, and you can really capitalize on that and make it like a whole kind of learning experience. But I think that that kids are really into it. And given in one of the episodes, I already disclosed how we were really planning and hoping to visit the Olympic Park in Beijing and to go to that. They turned the Olympic, I guess, pool into one of the world's biggest water parks. And we were trying to visit that because my kids saw videos about it and they were really excited. But when we actually went in with the tickets and everything, they wouldn't let us in because of the wheelchair. And that wasn't like the best experience. But in general, the preparation is half the fun, and when the kids really end up experiencing something like that, it's really great, and the joy is endless. That's what I
Yes.
wanted to say.
Yeah, my son loves to travel. He loves people. Something I want to bring up before this episode is over is a little controversial, but I'm going to bring it up anyway because it's real. Um, Sometimes you do not bring your child on your trip. And I know that some people feel very strongly about that a child should always be included. But sometimes it's okay, in my opinion, to have quality time with other family members where it also might be too challenging for the person with the disability, cause more anxiety. And there are ways in which we can travel with parts of our family and not the other parts. Everybody needs to be able to have some downtime, some respite, and sometimes it's really hard to be inclusive when there's very little time to. If we were vacationing all year, it would be one thing, but for little trips. So, in my opinion, I think we have done that. We have taken some of the kids on some trips, and we've taken Lincoln on separate trips, so that he has a wonderful pool of experiences. Like you're saying, Iris, it's really important for kids to travel and to experience other cultures and all that. um, and we have planned some trips where we know it will be very challenging for him with the food, and it's not just for us to have a little, peace of mind, but also for him. It's really hard for him to be exposed to food in ways that are very natural for people who don't have Prader-Willi syndrome. He gets very anxious. It's like it's a real tease for him. It's very tempting, and it can really put a black cloud over the trip for him and for us. I'm being honest. I'm not sugarcoating it here. So I just feel very strongly for our family that we can provide these different types of experiences for
Yeah.
everyone.
And
Everyone.
Alma, I was like one of those people, like, yeah, we're traveling, we're our families, all for one, one for all. We always travel together. Like, what are you talking about? We never leave anyone behind. And then my daughter became a teenager and she's like, I don't want to go with you. And she's like, I don't want to go to a water park. I don't want to do this and that. And eventually, we also had to understand that it's all of those things that we thought were hard for us were also really hard for her. Using the public restrooms on an airplane, for example, this is like serious acrobatics that is needed there, and she doesn't want to do it anymore. So we had to kind of like, okay, if you don't want to come, what do you want to do instead? And she's like, I want to have a sleepover with the Safta, which is her grandmother. And and my mom was, of course, is always ready to help. She's like, just tell me what and I'll do it. I'll cross the ocean swimming if you want me to. So she came, and they had like a, they had their sleepover party here, and we took our son on a vacation on his own for like 3 days. It's a new experience, but yeah, it has its advantages as well. What can I say? Sometimes you need to separate and rule, and it helps a lot. And
I
yeah.
conquer. Yes. And also, you're bringing it up from the perspective of, your daughter not
Mhm.
wanting to come. For us, you know, initially there was a lot of guilt because we were making that decision
Mhm.
because my son would want to come to everything. And so there is guilt involved. But the longer I thought about it and dealt with it, um, I didn't have as much guilt because he's getting to do fun things as well, just not necessarily the exact same things that we're doing all the time. And, that's not to say that we're not doing family things all the time. We're constantly doing family things. And, but, not everything has to be all for one, one for all, as you're saying.
Yeah. And the guilt, Alma, I guilt is a part of this game, but honestly, in some situations, you really do need to kind of swallow the guilt bullet and to separate forces. And sometimes it's so important for some couples just to keep the marriage going, to just have a break from that tormenting day-to-day task. And it's important to know yourself, know your partner, your family, know your other kids, and make priorities. And sometimes, you need to make sacrifices on one arena to make the others work better. And vacations, like stopping the day-to-day reality and moving into a different scenario, a different environment, is so helpful sometimes for everybody's mental health. So
Yes.
definitely guilt is inevitable almost, but as we spoke about the siblings episode, that you need to at each and every moment ask yourself which one of the kids really needs me more at this specific moment, not in general now. And
Right.
when you plan for family vacations, who needs the vacation most, and what is the purpose of this? Like, why are we going? How are we spending our budget? And what's the overall purpose of this? And sometimes it's just like really the adults just need a break.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with that. We need to recharge.
Yeah.
Self
I
care. Self
yeah,
care.
I know that we are about to finish. Like, obviously, there is like a whole bunch of recommendations about traveling with heavy duty equipment that I can speak about. Alma can speak about, like food preparation, and I want to ask our listeners, if you are planning a trip and you have the need for some more practical advice, recommendations, given a specific journey that you're about to embark on, we would be really happy to answer questions in your comments and emails. And we can also like give a more specific episode about like actual planning and the physicality of going on a trip with our kids. But that was a general overview for
Yes.
everybody's benefit. Alma, do you have any words of wisdom to part with?
Just put the guilt in a drawer and close it up. And as Iris mentioned, get out there, live life, take your kids whenever you can, and get those experiences down. Because not only is the anticipation part of the fun, after the vacation and looking at pictures and talking about it with people is a big part of the fun as well.
Thank you, Alma. Thank you for all our listeners, and we'll see you next time.
See you next week. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
For more information, please go to www.twomomsnofluff.com. Thank you.
If you like this podcast, please subscribe and give it a 5-star rating so more people can hear it. Thank you.